1. This actually happened a month ago. My roommate and I like to indulge in mushrooms here and there. A couple of days before college starts, my roommate decided to bring his 4 friends from home up to try mushrooms with us. It's important to note that 2 of them are semi-experienced trippers, and the other 2 are brand new. My roommate and I are still the most experienced out of the bunch. So we each take 2.5 grams, forget the strain, but it wasn't PE, and everyone else takes 1.5 to get the same experience as each other. Our first screw-up was not finding a trip sitter, as me and my roommate didn't have one our first time and we were fine. So we take the mushrooms and walk to get takeout Chinese for later that night. I ate a hot dog right before that was making me sick to my stomach as I was coming up, and one of the new friends, Sam, was feeling the same. I knew we were in for a ride when I start seeing hieroglyphics only 45 minutes in. I can't trip without listening to music of some sort, so when we get back to the apartment, I ask if music was okay. Everyone agrees. So I put on my hipster indie rock playlist on the speaker. Pretty soon the other new tripper, David, realizes the place messed up his order, so we have to reorder. But we also have to wait until it's ready, meaning we'll be fully tripping when we go get the food. We were sitting there vibing when one song comes on, Hollywood Forever Cemetery Sings by Father John Misty. And for those who don't know, the song revolves heavily around death, but I don't fully realize it was this song until I heard the line, "We should let this dead guy sleep." I feel it would be kinda weird if I skipped the song, so I waited until it finished. Then, Someday by The Strokes came on, and my mood instantly changes to happy again. Halfway through the song, though, Sam asks me to turn the music off because it's disrupting his trip, so I oblige. But I continue the playlist privately through my AirPods. A few minutes go by, I'm deep into examining my own hand. Wiggly. And suddenly hear a dreadful groan. Oh no! Damn, Sam's having a bad trip and I'm tripping too hard to speak in sentences. Oh well, at least there's 4 others that can help him. Nope. At that moment, the food's ready, so David, along with my roommate and his other semi-experienced friend, John, leave to get the food. I decide to stay back because someone who lives there should keep an eye on Sam, and the other semi-experienced tripper, Madison, stays as well. Sam's not having a good time at all. He's shaking his leg violently, and once in a while lets out a loud groan. I'm tripping far too hard to help him in any productive way, so Madison tries to help out, but she can't stop staring out the window. I start spiraling and thinking about my grandparents' recent deaths, but I'm an experienced enough tripper that I know how to stop a bad trip when I feel its onset. So I start thinking about my place in society instead, leaving me to realize I have revolved a large part of my personality around different aspects of my college that won't matter next year since I'm a senior. So here we are. Sam's groaning with his head in his lap, Madison's staring out the window, and I am having an existential crisis. Why? Why? Ooh, Chinese food. Also staring out the window, watching the trees swirl together. Suddenly, the other half of our group bursts into the room with the food, and in this exact moment, Daylight by Matt and Kim starts playing through my AirPods. It's like the gods themselves noticed our spiral and decided to send in their heavenly reinforcements. They put down the food and excitedly exclaim, "Guys, let's go outside! Let's go to the local park!" At this point I realize I desperately need to go outside, but I refuse to wear any college clothing due to earlier. So we go to the park. I'm listening to Mountain Sound by Of Monsters and Men while we tackle some trees with branches. And I randomly find an intact coconut. We're in New England. At this point, Sam's calmed down enough to explain how he saw way too many visions, including the end of the world, which he wouldn't elaborate on. He never said it was caused by the song, but I have no doubt in my mind it was. Whoops. Hellfreezer's note. If you're going to have mushrooms and Chinese food in the same night, I suggest it's only the kind that you fry, cover in soy sauce, maybe with some green onions, and plop on top of your chow mein. I've now made myself hungry. 2. This actually happened yesterday, but I was so shocked at my own stupidity that it has taken me some time to process. A few weeks ago, I went out on a first date with a girl named Alexandra. The date had some highlights and some lowlights. First off, she shows up and her pictures are pretty catfishy. Not terribly so, but probably 2 to 3 years and 10 to 15 pounds out of date. Being someone to not really get hung up on that type of stuff, I say screw it and decide to just chill and have a good time. We actually have a great time. We have a ton in common. The conversation flows naturally and easily, and she's a genuinely kind, cool, and fun person. There are a few red flags. She tells me about a business she's trying to start, but the story is full of holes. She tells me stories about her life that are obviously a little exaggerated, those kind of things. Overall, someone who I'd genuinely be into if they weren't trying so hard to be more than who they are. After dinner, I walk her to her car, but decide not to make a move, as I'm not sure if I want to take it further. I give her a hug, open her car door, and she looks at me and goes, "I wouldn't be upset if you kissed me." Caught a little off guard, already being on the fence and not wanting to hurt her feelings, I have a mini, oh crap moment, and then just lean in and kiss her, but call it a night when she starts to suggest that it's still pretty early. Over the week, we're texting and I decide to give it another shot, thinking maybe she was just nervous and she'll relax into being herself. So we make plans to hang out this last Saturday. Friday rolls around and I can tell I'm coming down with a pretty gnarly cold. I shoot her a text, let her know, and she's cool with it. Over the weekend, and beginning of this week, I feel pretty terrible. Congestion, sinus pain, and some pretty bad brain fog. On a somewhat related note, a girl who I'd chatted with for a while, but kinda dropped off, reaches out a couple days ago and asks if I want to hang out this Friday. I tell her maybe, but I'm getting over a cold, so probably not, but we'll let her know. So yesterday morning, I get a text from my friend, who is named Alejandra, asking how I'm doing and checking in. I don't get a chance to reply at the time, but plan to text her back later. A little later in the day, I'm driving and get a call. I glance at the phone, thinking it's Alejandra, and answer it. At this point, I should point out that Alejandra and Alexandra's names not only sound and look similar, but they also sound decently similar when you talk with them on the phone. Just familiar enough that a brain fog-addled mind doesn't pick up on the difference. Here's how the call went. "Hey you, how are you feeling?" "Pretty crappy still, but I think I'm getting over the worst of it. How are you?" "Doing well. I'm pretty busy, but just wanted to touch base since I haven't heard from you since the weekend." "I'm confused. You texted me at the weekend too? I'm really sorry. I've been totally out of it. I had planned to call you tonight. I can't chat tonight, I have dinner with my sister, but you could call me Friday if you like." "I actually might be going on a date on Friday. Not sure if I'm up for it yet, but I'll give you a call if I don't end up going." Cue a weird, confused, awkward tone. "Oh, well, if you're going to have a date, you don't need to call." "No, it's totally fine. If I stay in, I'll call you. If not, we'll catch up later." Okay. Now I'm really confused. "Okay, I guess we'll catch up later then." "Sounds good, bye." She hangs up. Now I come off this call totally befuddled. Alejandra and I are good friends, but she never calls and bugs me about not replying, and she never gets weird about me dating. It takes about 30 seconds of processing for the realization to dawn, and as I'm reaching to check my phone, I can feel the bottom of my stomach dropping out. I knew I screwed up bad. I sent Alexandra a text, completely, honestly explaining what had happened, and got a response saying that if I didn't want to see her again, I could have just said so, and that I didn't need to be such a dick and lie about it. Now I feel like a major dick. I know it was an accident, but damn it, brain, help a brother out. Elfreezer's note: I don't think the OP has anything to feel bad about here. They literally explained to the girl they were going to be dating that they were going on a date with them, then cleared up what had happened with the phone call after that. If she's not willing to listen to reason when you've explained it that clearly, I'd say you dodged a bullet. So, in a way, your brain did help you out there. 3. First, some context. I am a rookie aquatic scientist in the southern United States. My current project involves surveying biotic aquatic resources, and aquatic habitats on a plot of family-owned farmland to promote conservation of said natural resources. Today, a partner and I were sampling fishes from water bodies on the property to get a better understanding of the health of the local environment, as well as possible improvements that can be made to the property's ecosystems. For the game fish portion of our survey, we actually used fishing rods. Surprisingly valid methodology and science if done correctly. Both of us are avid outdoorsmen, as are many people in the field, so we love doing these surveys. As we were fishing this swampy land, we were systemically moving along the banks when I noticed some small juvenile alligators, probably 1 to 2 feet in the water. No big deal at all, alligators are very common down here and something I see frequently while working or while out on my own adventures. Plus, these are wee little babies. Juvenile alligators are often incredibly curious and not very cautious around us humans, especially as scientists' brightly colored equipment. We noticed them starting to come over to us, so we made a mental note of it. A few minutes later, we were surrounded in one direction by these little gators, and they showed a very keen interest in the floats we were using. We tried our best to catch fish and keep the alligators away from our equipment, but they weren't having it. Eventually, one chomped on a float we were using, and inevitably got hooked by the hook dangling below. The hook was in his foot near his claws, so not deep, fortunately. Nonetheless, I told my coworker to hold still while I retrieved the gator. I went out and grabbed the fella, except I made a mistake. I went into snake mode. There's a lot of snakes on this property, and I like picking up non-venomous snakes while I'm out there. Naturally, my little primitive caveman subconscious brain went,
"Alligator is reptile, snake is reptile. Grab alligator like snake."
So I grabbed the alligator's tail, and he instantly turned around and chomped onto my fingers. My middle finger started to bleed along with some lesser bleeding from my ring and pointer fingers. I realized my mistake, obviously, and grabbed right behind the fella's head. While this was going on, the fella was making a juvenile alligator's characteristic gulping sound to get Mama's attention. My partner and I were looking around all over the place waiting for Big Mama Gator to come out, but she didn't appear to be nearby today. What's funny is I didn't feel much pain from the bite, probably because it was a small gator and my adrenaline was pumping. Likely from my concern of Mama Gator coming out as any second. Hook eventually came out, and we went on our way. Another alligator got caught up in our lines, but I remembered to grab behind the head that time. The wounds on my hand are pretty minor and superficial. Mainly a series of small puncture marks and a few cuts on my fingers. I know this isn't a crazy almost died story by any means, sorry. Rather, I found it hilarious as hell and something my partner and I had a good laugh over once our gator friend swam off. 4. I was across the country, US, attending the funeral of my cousin who had passed away from COVID, and had used my vacation days to purchase first-class plane tickets for my journey. It wasn't the fun vacation I had saved for, but I was glad I had stashed enough to shell out for the good seats, as I was in an absolutely terrible mood and just wanted a little bit of comfort for myself in such an emotional time. I'm on the 4.5-hour section of my trip home, and we are just getting up to cruising altitude when I noticed a bit of commotion at the back of the plane. I'm not in the mood for drama, so I ignore it, and put my headphones on to listen to some true crime podcasts. I'm starting to doze off to murder and mayhem when I get a tap on my shoulder. Looking up, I see a flight attendant motioning for me to remove my headphones, with "please" hands. I slide them off one ear and she says, "I'm sorry, Miss Dennis Nedry, but you're flying under the honorific of Reverend? Are you a minister of some sort?" A little background time. Way back in 2000, my sister was getting married in a secular ceremony and asked me to officiate. So I got my official ordination credentials through the Universal Life Church for that purpose. Since then, I've actually married 6 couples over the years, so it's been a super handy thing to have. Annoyed that the only non-binary honorifics available when purchasing a plane ticket through most US airlines are Doctor or Reverend, I always chose the Reverend option when I fly. Why we even still require such titles for air travel when you already, understandably, have to state your gender to purchase a ticket is beyond me, but that's for another day. Back to the flight. I'm confused by why the flight attendant is asking. I'm thinking maybe she has a religious question, and even though I'm an atheist, I do have an advanced degree in religious studies and one in philosophy, and can and will happily talk about theology most days. Or maybe she has a question about getting credentials like I did. Curious, I answer to the affirmative. She follows up by asking, "Can you please follow me?" and motions to do so. Oh crap, I think. What if someone is dying and they want last rites or something? I'm clearly not a priest. I don't know what I was thinking. Now I'm really confused, and since my headphones are off, I can hear stifled wailing from somewhere behind me. I get up and follow, as she and I walk to the back of the plane. At the very last row, there's a woman in clear distress with a few other passengers and another, decidedly annoyed-looking flight attendant around her. The flight attendant I'm following turns to me and says, "This woman says she's in spiritual crisis and asked us to find out if anyone on the plane is a minister or deacon or something similar. We looked at the manifest and saw Rev in front of your name and wondered if you could please help calm her down." As she's saying this, the lady, I'd say around 65 or so, looks at me with puffy eyes and a red face, and she just looks so sad. I'm kind of on the spot here. If I say no, I really feel like this woman is going to continue to carry on, making everyone's flight miserable. But at the same time, 1, she's not my responsibility. 2, I'm not the kind of practicing reverend I'm sure she's looking for. 3, I'm a freaking atheist. I feel like I'd be misleading her to step in. There's something very disingenuous about thinking my college degrees could come close to the work a real religious leader does for people. Or I don't want to get involved in the level of potential crazy that is a public crisis on an airplane of all places. 5, I really just want to be left alone, and not dragged into an in-flight telenovela. I look at the flight attendant and tell her I'm sorry, I'm a reverend in name only, and I don't think I'm what they need. She looks pretty dejected and says she understands, but really the woman just needs someone to talk to, as she's coming back from her son's funeral. She says I'm free to go back to my seat, of course, and she'll let the lady know I can't help her. Y'all, my heart broke for the woman. Maybe it was because I was dealing with my own grief, or because the lady just looked so broken. But I really felt for her. I leaned over the seat in front of her and told her I was not a real practicing reverend, but if she just needed someone to listen to her, I'm all ears. I spent the rest of my flight in her husband's seat, and he got to sit in mine in first class. He looked like he maybe needed it more than I did, to be honest. Her name was Lydia, and she talked my ear off about her son for 4 more hours. We laughed, we cried. I really, really wanted to just sit in peace in my own seat and ignore the world, but I'm glad I could be there for Lydia. She was just overwhelmed, and it all came spilling out when she least expected it. I totally get it. Anyway, had the flight attendant told me what was going on before taking me down the plane to Miseryville, I would have immediately let her know I couldn't help. I wonder if it had been someone with doctor in front of their name and a medical emergency was happening, if the flight attendant would have sprung someone in cardiac arrest on a psychiatrist or classical history professor. Sounds more like a Monty Python sketch. Now, when telling this story before, some people have been hung up on the honorific part of my story, and are confused on why I didn't just choose none, so I'll clarify. Some airlines require 1 to book your ticket. I fly so rarely anymore, I didn't realize that's not a thing so much now, and many US airlines that used to require 1 no longer do. I made an account with this particular airline well over a decade ago when purchasing tickets to Mexico, I think. And when I did, there was no option to not choose 1 from a drop-down menu. You literally couldn't continue booking the flight unless you chose 1. As I recall, the options were Mr., Mrs., Miss, Doctor, and Reverend. I'm sorry that wasn't clear in the post. And for those who assume I'm a man because I chose Reverend, I've got news for you. Reverend is a gender-neutral, non-specific term that can apply to anyone, seeing as I'm technically a Reverend at the time. It seemed like the best option for someone who doesn't like gender binary terms. My username, Miss Dennis Nedry, is simply because Jurassic Park is my favorite film. While I was a little annoyed that I got roped into helping this woman, ultimately I chose to sit with her. I thought my sympathy for her was clear in the post. I had an out. I could have gone back to my seat. But she just needed someone to listen. She wanted to be heard. I don't know why her husband couldn't do that for her, but ultimately I'm glad that I was able to. Now, it may have been my mistake in choosing that while filling out the form, but ultimately in the grand scheme of things, that lady needed someone to talk to. So maybe me calling myself Reverend on that flight was the universe and life finding a way. Hellfreezer's note: I am also an ordained minister with the Universal Life Church. It literally takes minutes, so if you want to do it, have at it. Well, I'm wondering if I could legitimately get away with calling myself Reverend when I book a flight, which I'm hoping to do within the next year. Hellfreezer is severely deprived of hugs, and he needs to see his fiancée, so I'm hoping to get out to the US at some point, within the next 12 months. We'll have to see how things go with YouTube and my job search. 5. This didn't actually happen today, but it might as well have, since it gets brought up so often. When me and my boyfriend first started dating, I was staying at his apartment a lot. Like staying days at a time and only going home on weekends, if that. Well, there was a time period of about 2 months where we started pranking each other. Nothing crazy, just some harmless pranks that were so minuscule, I can't even remember most of them. Think changing the TV channel or putting an ice cube down their shirt. But there was one prank that started this whole thing. I was in the shower and he poured ice-cold freezing water with ice cubes all over me. The bathroom was set up that if someone moved sneakily, you really wouldn't see them until it was too late, so I was caught 100% off guard. A few minutes after, when I warmed up again, it was hilarious, so I thought it was my time to get him back. So using my logic, I thought to myself, what would be the best prank ever? And I came up with the solution: I'm gonna make him sneeze. So how do you make someone sneeze according to all the shows I've seen in my childhood? Just use black pepper. So that's the first mistake. He was sitting at his desktop and I went to the kitchen and poured the entire remaining bottle of black pepper into my hand and went to go stand by him. Because in my logic, more black pepper equals more sneeze. I called his name a few times, and when he looked over at me, I blew the entire thing into his face. He immediately fell to the ground screaming. At first, I thought he was laughing, so I was laughing too. But to my absolute horror, when I actually looked at him, there were tears pouring out and snot and screaming, and I realized he was definitely not laughing. I quickly grabbed some water in a glass and threw it in his face, then grabbed some milk and threw it in his face. And that calmed him down enough for me to grab him and shove him into the shower, and turn on the water and forcefully open his eyes under the shower. I spent the next week apologizing and waiting on him hand and foot, and not throwing things in his face, and he definitely took advantage. But I'm surprised I had a boyfriend after that. His eyes were swollen, burned, and bloodshot for 2 weeks after. Apparently, black pepper is one of the main ingredients in pepper spray and mace. And he didn't even sneeze. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Embarrassing Stories, episode 102. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please do hit the like button, and share the video with friends and family. And if you'd like to get early access to these videos, you'll get them on the Monday, then you can support me on my Patreon page, which is linked in the description. You can support me there for as little as $1 a month, and at the very least you get the videos on the Monday, all at once. Also in the description, you'll find links to the Hellfreezer Teespring store. If you'd like to buy yourself some Hellfreezer merchandise, there is also a link to the Hellfreezer Discord if you'd like to join us over there. And if you especially enjoyed today's video, then why not leave a tip? You can do that by clicking on the heart with the $sign underneath, but you don't have to do any of that, and please don't think you're obligated to. And none of us naughty YouTubers should be making you feel like you are obligated to, because you're not. But I do appreciate the help, and it's been helping a lot. Okay, so with no other bits and bobs today, let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And this one comes from Newcomb on the Discord. What antique item do you have that is still being used? They mentioned their refrigerator broke, and last night the iron is not working correctly. Just got a new one delivered from Amazon. Both not very old, makes me wonder if I should just go old school. Well, how old is old school? My refrigerator is over 20 years old, and well, I shouldn't say this out loud maybe, but it's been working very well. The only problem with my refrigerator is some of the shelves have just kind of gotten cracked over the years. In fact, the bottle shelf, the one that sits in the door, on the inside of the door, that completely broke into pieces. I've glued it back together, but I'm not going to put it back in the refrigerator yet until I can reinforce it, because I just can't buy replacements, I've looked. So that's going to happen at some point. I've got the bits there, I just need to find the time and the patience to cut the plastic, and then, get the good strong glue and clamp everything in place to reinforce it. But yeah, that's been doing quite well. That's probably the oldest electronic item that gets frequently used. The cooker I had for a few years, but it definitely wasn't as old as the fridge. In fact, I think we've had, I've had about, in this house there's been like 3 different cookers since that refrigerator was bought. Washer dryer, not super old either, maybe like a decade. Yeah, probably my refrigerator is the oldest functioning thing I have. There are other things in the house, like I don't use it, but I still have my father's old reel-to-reel tape recorder and player. That needs a bit of TLC, but I'd imagine just a little bit of adjustment. I think probably a spring or something it needs, or a head replacement, just to make it sound all good again. But yeah, those are my answers. Let me know what you think in a comment below. And before we go, let's have the answer of the day from a previous video. And I think this answer was in relation to self-driving cars. And today's answer comes from AJ Winberg. I wish I had a self-driving car so that I could sleep on my journey to Utah when my son has an appointment at the children's hospital there. It is a 3-hour drive, and I get really tired when I have to drive that trip. And that's fair, and I think I mentioned in that video that I was quite looking forward to the idea of it as well. Although there is another car, it's they're not fully released yet, they're still sort of, I think, trying to get the funding so they can set up a proper production facility. That's the Aptera. Not self-driving, but it is like solar powered. So if you live in a place where there's like lots of sun, you'll probably rarely need to charge it if you're just using it for your daily commute here and there. Though I'd imagine in the UK you will need to charge it, but it sounds like you'll still actually get a lot of benefit out of the solar aspect of it. So watching lots of videos about that got me quite excited about the idea, and it's expensive, but it doesn't sound like unattainable. I mean, unattainable to me at the moment, but hopefully not forever and ever. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.